How are you going to do a Richard Pryor documentary and not have Paul Mooney not even mentioned? That's an insult.
ABC recently dropped a documentary called The Last Days of Richard Pryor. Did you guys have a chance to check it out?
Yes, we saw it. We saw that crap.
Absolutely, we saw it. I'm still trying to figure out why they called it The Last Days, because they showed seemed like it was all his life.
That's right. Without Paul Mooney. Do you know he was not mentioned not one time? Not once. How are you going to do a Richard Pryor documentary and not have Paul Mooney not even mentioned? They showed some pictures of him, but they never mentioned him.
Yeah, I saw him in the audience laughing. Yeah. I saw him at the Comedy Store doing stand-up.
He was next to Pam Grier, right?
And saw him next to Pam Grier.
Yes.
Saw 3 sightings of Paul Mooney.
But his name never mentioned. That's an insult.
Right. I think there was a lot of people kind of responding or reacting the same way. I remember Wendy Williams, she raised the same question on her show about where your father was. Did the producers ever reach out to the family to try to get a story? Or
No, they did not. No, they did not. And ABC did not. And I don't know if you know, but a few years ago, because they absolutely know who he is. You know, Paul used to write for Three's Company. And also they did a whole half-hour news interview on Paul Mooney. So they know who he is over there. So it was definitely, it seemed to be a conscious effort to keep him out of that whole documentary and that whole life cycle of Richard Pryor.
But we don't blame it on ABC. We don't blame it on ABC. We believe the people who put it together are keeping Paul out for a reason. I don't even believe that show was about Richard Pryor. That show was about Richie Pryor.
Remember
some cocaine, Negro sellout comic who didn't know who he was. That's the way he was played. And then you had this white angel who took care of Richie, and if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have did what he did. Come on, that was bullshit.
Was it hurtful to see that they would go ahead and kind of deliberately not mention your dad?
Well, anytime you see something with Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney is not mentioned, it's a historic problem, because Paul Mooney was very much an influence in his life. Not only was he a writer for him, he was a friend, and he was also his muse, his confidant, his counselor. So to leave him out is ridiculous. He was the consciousness of Richard Pryor.
Yeah. And one thing they missed, brother, when they went over they went heavy into the drugs, and they went heavy into the past of him being raised in a house of prostitution with his mom and all of the decadent stuff that his life was about. And when it came to the conscious part of his life, seems that they glossed over that a bit.
And how are you gonna have Jimmy Walker speaking on Richard Pryor? Howie Mandel said he was influenced by. Howie Mandel was doing a baby on stage when Richard Pryor was doing stand-up at the Comedy Store.
Okay.
Howie Mandel speaking on Richard Pryor and what he meant to him.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding at least your perspective on it. You looked at the documentary and you feel that there's kind of a whitewashing to the documentary?
Oh, yeah.
They're removing.
Poor Richie.
Yeah.
Poor
Richie Pryor.
Richie Pryor.
Richie. Remember our little Richie Pryor when he was on the Ed Sullivan show?
Yes, when he was trying to do Bill Cosby, when he was trying to make it, and then when he flipped the script and he said he couldn't do it anymore. Well, and the fact that it was whitewashed because it deals with he was raised in a hoe house, and his father was a pimp, his mother was a madam hoe, and it's like, okay, that happens a lot in the community. I mean, that's not the reason why Richard Pryor was fucked up. A lot of us have seen fucked up shit in the community. Yeah. So, and a lot of us have been through stuff. It's like what happened was once you get on those drugs, your brain gets distorted. And if you do it at an early age, it's just hard to understand what reality is. I mean, so yes, it was a very whitewashing of Richard Pryor because it really didn't talk about the moves that he was making and that he was doing for black comedians, for the consciousness raising of black comics.
We did a story in regards to the allegations that came out. We had talked about it, yourself and you guys, and then you see stories like this come out in regards to ABC not putting your dad in Richard Pryor's story. Do you think they are, as far as the entertainment industry, is kind of treating your dad like a Cosby in a sense, where they're slowly trying to erase his legacy?
Ooh, I don't know how much the industry has to do with that information that came out with Paul, because there's so many. You guys have to really understand that Robin Williams used to sleep on our father's couch. David Letterman used to come by the house. It's some white folks that love our father. So I don't think that's an industry thing. We got a couple of comics that are ready to stand up for anything that white comics, any bad things that's said about Paul, because they were there. And we just want to say that that's just the nature of Hollywood, that they want to expose certain things. But if you look at what's going on, the family, Richard Pryor's family, where was his family in the documentary? Where was his black children? Nobody was talking in that documentary, and they know what their father was about, and they're not speaking on anything. They're not talking about the movie. They're not a part of the production. So we have to look at what's really going on behind the scenes, but I don't think it's just Hollywood, period, that's trying to leave Paul Mooney out. I think it's a few people, because I have two people, not only is our brother working on a documentary, other people, famous people, have come to us wanting to do a documentary on our father. So, our father's voice will not be silenced, because he had us. And when he had us, he had two strong black men who not only are standing up for him, but we stand up for righteousness. So, they're not going to shut us up unless they pay us enough.
Yeah, you gotta control the narrative. We can't let them.
Couple of million. Right.
We can't let them write Paul Mooney out of history, because Paul Mooney just meant too much and means too much to the comedy world, means too much to the entertainment world, and so we're going to make sure that we stand on principle. Paul Mooney, his greatness, and his relationship with Richard Pryor, as far as the art is concerned, and as far as what he meant to Richard's life and what he meant to his comedic life. Very, very important that we don't write that out, because if you take that out, you also take away the consciousness that Richard had. So we want to make sure that that light is shared.